right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Earth Day. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for one moment and introduce our presenters. Appreciate you being here with us today. So, my name is Katie McCain. I'm the Director of Sustainability at the City of Charleston. And I am very honored to be here with partners of the composting programs. We have Ariel Gerstein, who is the Sustainability Manager at Charleston County. And Kaylin Cozella is also at the City of Charleston. She's a project manager for the Resilience and Sustainability Office. Thanks for being here, Kaylin. Kaylin's going to be managing the Q&A, so if you have questions, you can just throw them in at any time, and we'll try to answer them. So if you need to jump off really fast, that's okay. And then we have Katie Bell here with the Charleston Parks Conservancy. And Katie's going to be our expert on home composting. And we have Megan McGill here. She's with Smart Recycling, and Smart Recycling is our contracted hauler. So she's going to talk to us about what items are accepted in the program. So if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A preferred. You can also throw stuff in the chat. I just can't promise we'll see them all because sometimes chats can get lost. But feel free to pepper us with all your questions and we'll try to answer them as we go along, even if we just type them up. One of the benefits of virtual webinars, right? Okay, I see a few folks testing out. Okay. All right, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen. All right. Does everything look good? Yes. All right, yay. Okay, I see you have 3 people raised hands. Can you guys throw what you need to ask in the chat or in the Q&A, please? We will wait for questions at the end, unless you want to put them in the Q&A. All right, and with that, Ariel, take us away.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, so we are so happy to be presenting today. We've had several in-person workshops. This is the first virtual workshop we are having, so happy to have all of you with us today. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick agenda of what we're going to go over. So first, we're going to just talk about the basics of composting. We are going to talk about our food scrap drop-off program, how commercial composting works, what's accepted and what is not for our program. And then, as mentioned, Katie is going to talk about composting at home, and then we're going to take your questions. So picking up your free caddy, obviously we are remote today. So we'll talk about some of the locations that you can pick up your caddy if you would like one. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is so much of a team effort, and we're really excited to share the team with you today. So this started in a couple of years ago as a very small test pilot program with just 3 sites that the City of Charleston started with the help of DHEC through a grant program. It has grown to over 20 sites. And as you can see, all of the partners, the county, Folly, Isle of Palms, Mount Pleasant, Sullivan's, and then all of our nonprofit partners. And then, of course, with Smart helping us as our hauler. So we're so excited to have all of these great organizations working towards the same goal of reducing food waste in our landfill. Next slide, please. Okay, so you guys might or might not know food is the #1 item found in landfills. Food scraps make over 25% of our garbage. So the goal really of this program is to divert our food scraps from the landfill. And that is why we want to see everyone put their food scraps in our drop-off site or be composting in their backyard, so the food scraps are not going into our landfill at Ferry. Next slide, please. Okay, so we like to show this slide because although composting is really important, it is not the first thing you want to do when you think about what you want to do with food. So it's when you think about food on a hierarchy and thinking about uh, buying food, the little logo on the left there, prevent, donate, compost. Compost is kind of third there. So when you go shopping, you want to think about, do you really, what you need for the week? If your refrigerator looks like this, really overpacked and stuffed, you want to think about what you're going to eat for the week, what you and your family are really going to use, and if things are going to waste, if things are, rotting, if you're having things go, getting expired before you can get to them, then you really want to think about that. Because although composting is a great way to deal with food that you can't get to, it's better to just not buy it in the first place. Or if food is still good, to be able to donate it so other people can take advantage of it. Next slide, please. All right, so we like to make this presentation as fun as possible. I throw some memes in there. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is just composting 101. So it's a natural process of recycling organic matter. So food scraps are turned into valuable soil amendments. The resulting is decomposed matter is called compost. It is rich in nutrients and can be used as a natural fertilizer. Next slide, please. Okay, so you might be thinking, well, why is composting so important? I mean, I can just throw my food scraps in the landfill and they'll just decompose. So why is it that big of a deal that I need to compost them? Well, the big deal is because food gets buried in a landfill. And so it doesn't receive oxygen. So it actually doesn't decompose naturally, and it gets trapped and it rots in layers of trash, and it produces methane, which results in climate change. And it produces methane, which is over 25 times more harmful than carbon dioxide. So that is what we want to prevent. So here are some of the benefits of composting. We already talked about combating climate change. We can reduce trash expenses by saving landfill space and taxpayer dollars. We can protect against flooding because composting can absorb a lot of water when we're using nutrient-rich soil that is full of compost. We can save plants and animals when we use compost-rich soil instead of soil that is full of pesticides and chemical fertilizer. Then animals are not, intaking that. So composting has multiple benefits, and you might not realize, but the Charleston region throws away over 30,000 tons of food each year. Next slide. Okay, so I'm going to talk
Yeah, I'll
about.
jump in here.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so today we have two programs. Two methods of composting your home food scraps. And some of you might actually appreciate both of them. So let's go through them. So the first program we have is our food scrap drop-off site. So this is a program that started in 2022. We tested it, the city tested it as a pilot program, and it was so successful that we invited regional partners to join in, and we're actually now up to 20 drop sites, and we're on to the third year of the program. So this program is simple. This is sort of what an example drop site looks like. This is at Corinne Jones Park. You can see the beautiful Charleston Parks Conservancy's community garden behind. And we have 2 compost bins at each site. This is the permanent signage already since this site was tested. And it's pretty simple. You just collect your food scraps at home, and we're going to give you that container. We'll let you know where to pick that up at the end of the webinar. You take your food scraps to any drop site you choose, and you can use your freezer in between trips. So I like to tell folks, if they're going on vacation, that is a great way to just throw them in the freezer. You don't have to worry about bringing the food scraps before you go on vacation. And then just rinse your container and repeat. So it's really that simple. We contract with a hauler that services them at least twice a week. That helps prevent them from getting kind of gross. And sometimes we do it more, especially in the summer months. So now, how do you put them into the carts? You can either pour them in loosely, like in this picture, or you can use compostable bin liners. That is okay too. All right. So where are all these drop sites? So as Ariel mentioned, there are 6 partners that are teaming up on this part of this regional effort. And you can see we have drop sites all over the region. And how it works is each organization that is participating manages the drop sites in their area. So you can see, for example, there's a drop site on Folly Beach, and Folly Beach manages that drop site. So the city has a certain number, and so do our other partners. But we are a regional program, so you can take it to any drop site. So I like to tell people, you know, when you're going to the beach, you can drop off at Folly or Isle of Palms or Sullivan's. Not usually the first thing I think of when I'm going to the beach, but it is possible. So remember that you can, you know, on your way to work, on your way to run errands, you can take it to whatever site is convenient. We do have an interactive GIS map on our website, and you can zoom in and click on each star, and it will give you directions. It will show you a picture. It'll tell you the hours that it's open, pretty much daylight, and the contact information. So for whoever manages that site. So if there is an issue that arises, we'd appreciate you letting us know. The West Ashley Farmers Market is held at Ackerman Park. Actually, the first market is this Wednesday, so that's pretty exciting. So if you shop at farmers markets, this is a great opportunity to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, get your shopping done, and drop off your compost. Okay, yeah, so we try really hard to prevent contamination in these carts, because if a cart gets contaminated, we must landfill it. And we actually tested this in the pilot with no locks, and it didn't work. We saw lots of dog poop bags and trash going into them. So that is why we lock the carts. And basically what happens if a cart is contaminated is I get a call from our hauler who says, hey, Katie, this bin is too contaminated to take to the compost facility. I'm going to need you to empty it. And then I have to call environmental services, and they go out and empty the whole bin into the trash. So to prevent that from happening, we put locks on all the bins. So you may be asking, well, what's the code? So when you signed up for this webinar, you signed up for the webinar, you didn't actually sign up for the program. So when you sign up for the program, you'll take about a 10-minute little class online. It's a little quiz, sign up, and it goes through what's accepted, what's not. You'll be a pro after this workshop, so you'll be able to go through it a lot faster. But basically at the end of that sign up process, you will get the code. And that code works on every cart. It's the same. It never changes. People ask all the time. It doesn't change. So that's how you get the code. So I just want to repeat that one more time. You do have to actually register for the program. When you signed up for this webinar, you only signed up for the webinar. And you register for the program on the website. So as I mentioned, using your freezer is a great summer compost tip. Also, you know, in between trips, we do have some people that, you know, especially if they're coming from farther away, they'll bring like 5 bags over at the same time, all frozen, and that is perfectly acceptable. Whatever works for you to limit your trips. We do also have a resource for managing fruit flies. So this becomes a challenge in the summer, as we all know, living in Charleston. Remember, fruit flies come in on your fruit from farmers markets, from grocery stores. The eggs are often on there anyway. So it's not your compost that's causing the fruit flies, but they will eat off your compost. So sometimes it is easier in the summer to just make sure you're emptying your bin more often, using your freezer as a source. But we also have this handy guide to help prevent them and to help deal with them if you have an infestation. But we hope fruit flies won't prevent you from composting over the summer. Wanted to just share some progress from last year. So we had another great year where we met our goal in 2023. We also met it in 2022. We diverted over 150 tons of food scraps from the landfill. So that's pretty exciting. And we have over 2,000 households participating. We're up to about 2,500 now. So that's pretty neat. So our goal this year, and you all will help us meet our goal, is to divert 200 tons of food scraps from the landfill. And we actually have an amazing interactive map on our website that I'm going to show you really fast. Okay. Share screen. Okay. So you can actually go onto this dashboard. It's linked online. It shows you, it's all the data for the program and it's clickable by year. So I could simply go to 2023 and see everything that was collected, the metric tons in 2023, the participants. I can also click on each drop site. So if I want to see just what was collected on Daniel Island, I can see Daniel Island did 8% of the food scraps last year. And you can see they averaged about a ton per month. So that's pretty neat. And then we do have a map for the drop site information that is also where people are registered, that is also available online. So that's pretty neat. Okay, we'll go back to this. So here's the swag we have for you. You will be able to pick these up and where you pick these up is at the permit center at 2 George Street. So at the Gilliard, there's a permit center on the first floor. And you can just walk in and say, I'm here for my free kitchen compost caddy, and you can grab a caddy. There are also some samples of BPI certified compostable bags. Grab like 3 to 5 and test them out. If you like them, great. If you don't, that's fine too. You don't have to use them. You just need to make sure that they are BPI certified compostable, and Megan's going to talk a lot more about why that is so important and what that means. So there is a special bag if you're going to use bags. Okay, and like I mentioned, you do still have to sign up for the program to get the lock code, and this is the website. I will throw it in the chat. And now Megan is going to talk to us about how the Bees Ferry compost facility works. This is the commercial compost facility that Charleston County owns locally.
Absolutely. So as Katie mentioned, all of the food waste in this program is going to go to the Charleston County Bees Ferry Compost Facility, which is a commercial facility which can process this food waste and turn it into compost in 45 days. So on the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how this composting magic works. Next. So of course, we're talking about the compost life cycle here. So we're going to start collecting that food waste at home. Hopefully you're going to grab a free countertop bin, but any container will work. You're going to bring that to your nearest drop site and put it in the food waste smart carts. And then Smart will come and haul that food waste away with one of our trucks and take it to the compost facility. There, Bees Ferry and McGill are going to work their composting magic to turn that into nutrient-rich compost, where we can then sell it to other farmers and gardeners and grow more food. And that's how that cycle continues. Yeah, it does feel good to know that we're keeping all that food waste out of the landfill. So how does this work? At the compost facility, they need 2 main ingredients. That's yard waste and food waste. They're collecting all that yard waste from around Charleston County, and then at the facility, they're going to grind it up so that it will decompose quicker in the compost. And that ratio is about 10 to 1. So you actually need 10 times as much yard waste as food waste for this to work. Once they mix that together, they're going to place it in something called windrows, which you can see pictured here. In those windrows, it's going to start cooking, and they want to reach a temperature of 131 Fahrenheit degrees. And they're going to remain there cooking, so to speak, for 15 days. And they are being flipped 5 times during that process to keep adding oxygen to these piles. Then that mixture is going to be moved to what's called aerated static piles, where they're going to cure for the next 30 days. You can see in these tubes here, they're going to be pushing oxygen into those piles to help expedite the cooking process. Once all of that is done, it is ready for screening so that they can sell it to customers. So as I mentioned, this only takes 45 days, and that is one of the reasons that BPI certified products are an important and key component to the process. I'm going to talk more about that, but that certification lets us know that the product you're using can break down in this composting process in that 45-day window. So do you want to buy the compost that you helped create? There's a couple of options for you. One is to take a 5-gallon bucket to the compost facility at Bees Ferry in West Ashley, and it's only $1 a bucket to fill that up and take it home. If you're looking for more compost, you have a bigger project you want to tackle, then go to their website, beesbestcompost.com, put in your zip code, and you can search for retailers near you that are selling that local compost in bulk. And if you'd love to see more, they are hosting tours. We missed one just passed on April 20th, but they have another on May 11th. You do need to register for that event. So make sure you go to the city's website and click on the link to register. But if you do go to that, you get 2 5-gallon buckets, or get up to 2 5-gallon buckets of free compost. Just make sure you bring your buckets with you. So each composting facility is different. It all depends on their permitting as to what they can accept. So we are going to talk about in depth what is accepted in this program and why. Next. So let's start with fruits and vegetables. So any type of produce that you're purchasing at the store, growing at home, can be included in your food waste bin. So can dairy products. So if you've ever looked into backyard composting, you might have heard that maybe you don't want to throw dairy products in there. But in this program, because it's going to the compost facility, all of your cheeses, milks, and yogurts can go in your food waste bin. So can compostable liquids. We're talking about small amounts of liquids. Maybe that's the juice of a watermelon you just sliced up, or some soup that went bad in the back of the fridge. Those things can go in your food waste bin. So can processed foods. So, we think of fruits and vegetables as, the type of food we're eating, but also frozen pizza, corn dogs, any of those things that maybe, was created somewhere else, but now came out of the freezer and we didn't finish all of it. All of those items that didn't get eaten can go in your food waste bin. Baked goods, bread, pastas, and grain, same idea. It doesn't matter whether it's freshly made at home or bought at the store. Any of those items are perfectly acceptable in the program. Coffee and tea grounds and filters. So both the grounds and the tea leaves are great in your food waste bin, but so are those filters and tea bags. Just keep an eye out for a couple things when you're looking at buying more tea bags. One, make sure that bag is not some sort of plastic. You want something that's a paper. And two, if it has a staple in it, you'll need to remove that staple. I know they seem really small and insignificant, but if there's hundreds of them in the compost pile, that's going to be in the end product, and we want to avoid that. Eggs and eggshells, you can include any of those in your food waste bin. And then cooked meat. So you might be thinking, again, I heard I shouldn't put meat in my compost, but in this program, because it's going to a commercial facility, you are allowed to include cooked meats. That includes cooked fish, bones, and shells as well. The exception there would be recycling oyster shells. So oyster shells aren't going to break down quickly in this program, and DNR has a much better suited recycling program for those. So if you are utilizing, eating, consuming a lot of oysters, or have a special event where you're going to have a lot, please go to the DNR website and look up their locations for dropping those off. They always need more oyster shells, and that helps us to then support the oysters in our local area. And then, of course, food soiled paper. So that's your dirty napkins, maybe a greasy pizza box, a to-go container. So there's a couple of things that are important to look for here. One, if we're talking about pizza, we don't want to fill up the cart with a bunch of cardboard. So please, if you have a clean pizza box, it's not greasy, put that in your recycling bin. If the bottom half is really greasy, you can tear off the clean part and recycle that and only put the soiled part into the food waste bin. We don't want to fill up all the space in these carts with just cardboard. We want the main thing to be food waste. And of course, at any time you can recycle, traditionally, that's your first choice when it comes to paper and cardboard. But your dirty, greasy napkins, or maybe the paper bag that you got your Chinese in might have some grease on it. Those kinds of things can go in the food waste program. We're going to talk a little bit more about containers and BPI certified products here in a minute. Next. Definitely want to throw those apple cores in your compost bin. So what can't go in your food waste bin? Let's start with no raw meat. So raw meat is not accepted by the compost facility at Bees Ferry. Raw meat is something that you have to have a special permit for, and they have opted out of that. So that's something you're not going to want to include in the commercial compost bin, and you're probably not going to want to put that in your backyard compost either. So no raw meat across the board. No plastic items. Again, anything that you could recycle, please do so. But plastic items, grocery bags, anything like that does not go in your food waste cart. No fats, oils, grease. So this is referring to large amounts of oils and grease. Like if you deep fried a turkey, that oil cannot go in your compost bin or your food waste bin. However, there are many collection sites that can accept those for recycling. So look up your local county that you're in and find out where the nearest recycling center is for that type of oil or grease. However, if you, let's say you sauteed some shrimp on the stove, that little bit of oil or butter that you have left in the pan, that you can put in your compost bin. That's okay, but you don't want to just be dumping oil or grease into the food waste bin. No chemical cleaners. So if you feel that you need to freshen up your compost bin in some way, you can use natural things such as vinegar, baking soda, maybe put some cinnamon in there, but don't use harsh chemicals like bleach to clean that bin, because anything you put in your food waste bin at home is going to end up in the final product of compost. So we want to avoid putting any chemicals into our bins. And then of course, no non-food items. So again, glass, metal, wood, large amounts of wood we don't want to put in there. And then pet droppings. Some people think that would be a compostable item. That is not something that is accepted by Bees Ferry, and we don't want to see those in the food waste bin. So no pet droppings. And you may be thinking yard debris, like that's part of the recipe. Why can't I include that? They need that to be separate so that they can break it down into smaller pieces. And most residents have access to free yard debris pickup. So do recycle that properly at the curbside when available. And of course, when in doubt, leave it out. We'd rather you have a couple of items that don't make it into the cart than have an entire contaminated cart because you chose the wrong thing. So, and then let's talk about and focus on a few items you probably find in your kitchen that aren't compostable. So probably a big one is plastic grocery bags. Definitely, we don't put those in the compost. And if you want to recycle those, you can usually take them to your local grocer to recycle them. Those bread tags, so whether they're the metal ones or the plastic ones, those are not compostable. They're not going to break down in the program. And then this sneaky little one is the produce sticker. You're going to find that on your bananas, maybe on your apple. But the glue that makes those stick onto those produce items so well also makes the sticker not good for the program. It's not going to break down, and we don't want to have hundreds of produce stickers in the final product when they're screening that compost. And then, of course, rubber bands, also not a compostable item. So don't include those with your produce. Okay, so BPI certified compostable materials. This is what you're going to be looking for if you want to buy liners to use in the program. If you're ordering to go from your favorite restaurant, ask them, are they using BPI compostable material? You can look for this logo on the product itself. If you're having a big party and you really want to use disposables, but you want to be able to compost them, then when you are searching to purchase those, please look for this logo, BPI compostable material products. That logo means that that specific item that you're purchasing has been tested to break down in that 45 days in a commercial compost facility. So biodegradable is not the same thing as BPI compostable certification. Biodegradable just means that something will someday break down in the earth. So, this computer I'm talking on could someday be, biodegradable, but it's clearly not compostable. So it's important that you look for that logo. You can, as Katie mentioned, they're going to be giving away some BPI certified liners for your kitchen caddy. If you want to purchase more of those, you can go on Amazon or, maybe a local retailer and look for a liner that has this logo in order to use it in the program. And as Katie said, I'm Megan, I'm McGill, I'm with Smart Recycling. We are the hauler for this program. We also support restaurants and other businesses in the area that have compost needs. If you know any restaurant that you love to frequent and you're wondering if they are composting or recycling their food waste, please ask them, please let them know that this service is available to them and that it's something that's important to you. And if you have any questions or need to reach me, you can see my info there on the slide.
Great, thanks, Megan. And now we have Katie Bell with the Charleston Parks Conservancy, who is going to pivot us to composting at home and talk a little bit about why you might do both.
Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us on talking about this. So composting at home, we're going to just talk about the basics and some of the differences between what Megan was talking about, a facility that does mass quantities and certified versus how long it's going to take you to do it at home and how much time you want to put into it. So next slide, thank you. So basically, it's a similar ratio to what Megan was talking about, but we're talking about it on a much smaller scale. So we're talking about browns, greens, and then air and water. So at home, we want to do a 3-to-1 ratio of browns to greens. 3 parts browns, that would be your yard debris. And then 1 parts greens, that would be your food scraps. And then we're going to be adding air manually by turning it. And then water, usually if we're getting enough rain and that compost pile is exposed to the rain, that's plenty of moisture. We also have a lot of humidity in the air here in the low country, especially in the summertime. So that usually will provide enough. If we have an unusually dry period of time, a simple sprinkling down with the hose will work as well. So what are browns? What are greens? So browns would be, again, your yard debris, your dry leaves in the fall, any shredded newspaper, sawdust and wood shavings, cardboard and paper tubes, and then hay and straw. Those are typically what you're going to find. I would suggest the finer the material, the smaller it's in pieces, the shorter time it's going to take to compost that properly. If you're putting in your compost pile larger limbs, larger green debris, it's going to take longer for that to decompose properly. So just be aware, the smaller the item, the faster the compost is created. The larger the item, the longer the time it's going to take. So our greens are going to be all of our food scraps and Some things we're going to exclude that Megan talked about at home because it does take longer. So we're going to talk about why we're going to exclude those things. So fruits and vegetables, all those scraps. Coffee grounds and filters. Those are great ones. Coffee is a great item to put into your compost pile. Tea bags. And again, I would really consider what Megan said. Make sure you're taking the staples out of those tea bags so that it doesn't end up in your finished product. Eggshells. Eggshells are great. I even crush them up and just sprinkle them on top of my compost pile. And then grass and plant clippings. So you can see we want way more brown than we want green. So a lot of times in home composting, that ratio gets shifted and we end up having more green than brown. And then the compost process doesn't happen as fast. It slows down. You get more fruit flies. You get, and you can even get it to stink a little bit. So we want to make sure that your ratio of brown stays up above your ratio of greens. So the magic happens. When the magic happens, it's when you start to see steam coming out of your compost pile. That means that the process that's taking 45 days with Megan at Bees Ferry is starting to happen in your home compost pile. And that can take several months. So, things we're not going to include in our home compost pile. This is the biggest difference between what you're going to take to the food scrap program versus what you're going to do at home. So we do not want to include fish, meat, or bones. Why? You need a higher temperature to decompose those items faster, like what Megan and Bees Ferry are doing. Okay, so we do not want to include those things at home. No dairy products, no oily foods, no grease, cooking, or oil. Again, those products take a much higher temperature to reach and to decompose, and we're just not reaching that at a home compost level. Okay, and then we want to always avoid our plastic bags and wrap, your coated paper, no wax paper, none of that kind of stuff. Sawdust or shavings from painted or treated wood, that's a big one. If it's been painted or treated in any way, we do not want it in our compost pile. And then we really do want to avoid our evergreen leaves. That is your pine. That might be your cedar that you have in your yard. So those are the two most common things in the Southeast would be pine and cedar. We want to avoid those in our compost pile as well. And then these are just some examples of what a compost pile and bin system can look like. You can find a ton more on Pinterest on how to build them and such. One thing I will recommend about anybody doing home composting, make sure you have a way to turn the pile. Make sure you have a way to put a pitchfork in and hand turn it if you don't have one that has a crank on it where it's constantly turning itself over. I find the biggest mistake and people why they stop composting at home is because they haven't created an access point for themselves and it gets to be too burdensome. So really create a system for yourself where you're able to get in all the way to the bottom and flip it over. And typically we use pitchforks for that. Here at the Conservancy, we do composting at every single one of our community gardens. As Katie was saying, our food scrap program is at Corinne and at our Medway garden, community gardens, and we compost all of our material with the city of Charleston as well. So our bin systems is the one down in the left-hand corner, which is, yes, a pile is just fine. That's what we do. And then how do we use our compost? Well, compost is once you've gotten that, that gold, that dark, rich gold of compost, how we use it in our gardens is we top dress all of our community garden plots with compost 2 times a year. So it's just natural fertilization for our plants, and it helps amend our soil and the health of our soil in those plots. So we recommend doing that in February, top dressing anywhere from 1 to 3 inches in your garden. It could be directly in the ground or in a raised garden or even in pots in your apartment patio. So 1 to 3 inches in February and then again in August and September. And that really correlates to the seasons if you're going to turn your vegetable or fruit gardens over to the new season. So in February and March, we're planting for the spring and summer seasons of those crops. And then in August and September, we're really planting for the fall seasons of those crops. So that correlates with that time frame. We want to add our compost then.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Katie. There are quite a few questions for you in the Q&A. I'm going to bring everyone back. And I did just add a link to, I believe it's SC Heck's Backyard Composting Guide. It's a great resource with lots of answers in there too, if that's helpful for anyone. And just a reminder, you can do both. So you can choose to compost at home, you can choose to use the food scrap drop-off program, or you can do both. So remember, at home, Katie mentioned you don't usually put your meats and your dairy, and you certainly don't want your low country boil shrimp shells in your backyard or on your porch, but you could bring those into the drop site program, and we do take them since the commercial process can break them down. So, let's see. So you can put questions in the Q&A in the chat, and you may raise your hand. I know that someone has had their hand raised for a very long time. Joe Carroll, would you like to talk? Okay, well, Katie, if you want to just start answering the questions in the chat.
Yeah, so I've been answering some questions. So somebody said, "Can I compost on my porch?" You can certainly compost on your porch. I'm not sure that I would want it that close to my front door or my back door, because as things decompose, there can be a smell. So what I would really suggest, if you have an apartment, if you have a small house or small yard, and maybe don't have space to do a small compost pile at home, is to use exactly what the city is doing, which is the food scraps program. Grab a bin. We have one here at the Conservancy for our staff. We have a bin, and it stays in our freezer here. And again, that's for fruit fly control and such. And we just take that to our gardens and drop those food scraps off pretty much like once a month or whenever the bin gets full. So that's what I would suggest if you've got a small yard or you're even in an apartment. Let's see. I was answering a question, and I'll just talk about it. Is there such a thing as a compost pile that's too acidic? Melissa was asking. Too many onion peels, citrus peels, grounds, coffee grounds, etc. The biggest thing I'm going to remind everybody of composting at home is that 3-to-1 ratio of browns to food scraps. When our piles when they're not decomposing properly, it is not necessarily based on what the food scrap is or what the brown material is. It's the ratio is off, meaning I've got too many food scraps in there. I've got too much green in there and not enough brown. So I think that is the biggest thing I see in home composting problems, is that ratio balance is off. If you are a family like my family, we have a family of 5, we produce a lot of food scraps. I'm not putting all of those food scraps in my home compost pile every single day. So what I do is I do a ratio. I will do maybe once a week of food scraps in my home compost pile, and I take the rest of it to the food scrap program bins, because it would be too much for my home compost pile if I'm not putting more brown in there every time I put food scraps in. So that's probably the best way to answer that question. Should I avoid composting weed seeds in my home compost? Okay, we get this question a lot. No, you don't have to avoid it. For the most part, and this is not a blanket statement of truth all the way around, but for the most part, a home composting system, even what you're going to get at Bees Ferry, the compost pile gets hot enough to kill most weed seeds. So when you're adding that compost back into your plot or your garden, you shouldn't really see a whole lot of that germination from those seeds happening because it just gets too hot. It kills those seeds off. So I throw my weeds in. It's not a problem at all. Can you add ash from burned yard debris in your home composting pile? Does anybody have? I do put ash in my compost pile, but again, I'm not doing it often. It's every once in a while. It's not something I would overload the system with, if that makes sense. Where's the best place to store the bin before taking it to a site? Again, here at the Conservancy, our staff, we put ours in the freezer. Katie, I'm sure you've got some good suggestions on where people can store their compost bins as well.
Yeah, I honestly suggest that folks, we call it co-locating their bins. So make it just as easy to compost something as it is to throw it away or recycle it, and put all 3 of those bins at the exact same spot in your home.
Yeah.
And it's not like if you have to take extra steps to go to your porch, you may not do
Right.
it every time.
Absolutely. We find the same thing with gardening. Keep your compost areas near your garden to some extent, because you don't want to haul that debris all the way across the yard, because you won't do it. Sunny or shady spot better for home composting? I'm going to opt for the sunny. Why? Because in shade, we've got a lower temperature, and temperature is very important for the decomposition process. So a sunnier location is going to be best. If you have some place that gets 4 or 6 hours of sun, that's probably adequate. I would not keep it in a really shady spot because it's going to slow the process down. And keep in mind the size of your compost pile at home. It may take 6 months to a year for that to properly decompose to use as compost in your garden. So the process is a much longer process at home, but I will tell you that it's very gratifying to be able to turn that pile over, see the steam happening, and then be able to use it in your garden the next season.
Okay, we have a couple hand raised. Joe Carroll, did you want to ask a question live? All right, how about Linda Ashley? Okay, Linda, you're up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You said you can use to-go containers, so that means those ones that are coated, like from Chinese restaurants, ice cream cartons, can be put in the food scraps?
So to-go containers that can be put in the food scrap carts are containers that are BPI certified compostable. Remember, Megan talked about that certification. Now, the tricky part is a lot of the restaurants that are using compostable products, usually the certification is not necessarily right on that product. It's sometimes on the container the product comes in. So you may not be able to see that. So the best thing to do is ask the restaurant or place you're getting to-go containers from. But generally, as long as it's paper, even if it has like a little wax on the inside, that's okay. And if it's the PLA, like the compostable plastic, that's okay, as long as you are absolutely positive it's compostable plastic, and have verified that. Because if it's plastic, then it will not break down in the compost process, and that will contaminate it. Does that help answer your question?
Well, partially. How about milk cartons and ice cream cartons? They've got something on there, but I mean, I know they can be recycled.
You should, anything you can recycle, you should recycle first.
Well, okay, I have been collecting and putting it in an ice cream carton. So it would be convenient just to drop that in the scrap container, but you're saying you would prefer that I just dump it in there and then recycle the.
If you're using an ice cream container to hold your compost, that's a great idea. I think you could just drop the container in. Megan, are you comfortable with that?
I think it probably depends on the container itself. A lot of those probably have some sort of film on the inside that's made up of a plastic. So I would be checking that that cardboard and see if it's truly a cardboard. If you see a shiny surface on the inside, and then it most likely is a cardboard kind of fused with some sort of plastic. So I'm not 100% sure on that, but I would look for that to make that decision.
That's the problem with the waxes, is a lot of
Yeah.
times they have plastic in the wax. So you have to just make sure it's the right kind of wax. I know that's not a great answer.
It sounds like that's one of those where if in doubt, leave it out.
Yeah, probably.
I just won't put it in there.
Just a quick side note, I just Googled it very, very generally, and it does say that most paper dairy cartons are lined with a plastic called polyethylene. And this is a contaminant for compost and for recycling. So something to definitely look into for those of you that enjoy milk and ice cream products.
Joe Carroll, would you like to talk? Is there anyone else? I don't see any other raised hands. We will be here for the next 5 minutes. If anyone has any other questions you want to throw in the chat or in the Q&A, want to make sure you get all your questions answered. We will put a recording of this up on the City of Charleston's YouTube page, and it will be linked on the Compost website. So training will be available all year round. So if you know anyone interested in participating, you can send them to the website. And if they would like a full training, they can certainly click on this at any time. I do encourage you to pick up your free compost bin as soon as you can. We have plenty for everyone on the webinar today. But after Friday, the remainder will be open to the public to grab. So I just want to make sure I give you that heads up. You can get your free bin at 2 George Street, the Gilliard Center. It's at the Permit Center on the first floor. And just walk in and ask them for your free compost bin and grab a couple compostable bags. And they are open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5. So you can head over there right now if you like, after work, before work tomorrow. But if you can pick it up this week, I can guarantee you a bin. All right. Any other questions, comments? I'm glad to hear the tour Saturday went well. And there's another one coming up in May. So if you didn't get a chance to tour the facility, check it out. The bins we are giving away are 2.5 gallons, I believe. And they are made of recycled plastic. So if you want like a really fancy sterling silver metal bin, we are not giving those away. I'll save you the trip. But these bins are great. I've been using the same one for over 2 years and it's perfect. And we have the bags that fit it exactly. You are very welcome. Thank you for coming, everyone. It has a nice handle. It locks with the handle, so you can keep the flies out. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, you know, I never put the fruit fly resource on the chat, but it's on the web page. There's a whole resource and training page. Nope, you're very welcome, Rebecca. All right, well, if there are no other questions, we will close the meeting. We appreciate everyone attending and thank you for doing the right thing. Thanks to all our presenters also. What about the locks, Megan?
Just the difference that they might find at different carts, the different locks, and where the code lines up on each of them, or how to find that information.
There you go. We have some different locks we've been testing. I think we finally found one that we really like that's the most user-friendly. So if you see different locks, we'll have some information on our website of how to use them. The gold locks can be tricky. They line up on the top line. So we're trying to phase them out so they're not so difficult. All right. I think we are good. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you to all my partner panelists. I appreciate you being here. Thanks, Kaylin, for managing the chat. All right, over and out.
Thanks for having us.